The desert was silent, only the wind moving across the endless sand. A lone human soldier walked slowly, his boots heavy, his uniform torn, his body weak. He had survived the battle, but he was alone now, far from his unit, far from safety. Every step felt like the last, but he pushed forward, because giving up was not in his nature. As the sun burned above, something caught his eye in the distance. Smoke rose into the air, black and twisting against the bright sky. He narrowed his eyes and saw the wreck of a small alien craft. Broken and half buried in the sand, the metal was twisted, flame still. Licking around the edges, he hesitated, his heart racing. Should he go closer, or should he stay away? It could be a trap, or maybe the enemy waited inside. But curiosity and duty pulled him forward. He gripped his weapon tighter and moved carefully. Step by step, he reached the wreckage. The air smelled of burning wires and strange chemicals. Inside the cracked hull, he heard a faint sound, a cry. Soft, weak, almost like a whisper in the wind. He looked closer and froze there. Trapped under part of the broken craft was an alien girl. She was young, her skin pale with a faint glow under it, her eyes half closed, shining like stars. Her breathing was shallow, her body shaking. For a long moment, the soldier stood still. This was the enemy, the very kind that had brought war to his world. Every order he had ever known told him to turn away, to let her die. But something in her face stopped him. She did not look like a warrior. She looked like someone lost, afraid, and fragile. The soldier's chest tightened. He heard the sound of drones in the distance, scanning the battlefield for survivors. If they found him here with her, he would be marked as a traitor. Still, his hands moved before his mind could stop them. He threw aside his weapon and rushed to the wreck. With all his remaining strength, he lifted the heavy metal piece trapping her. His muscles screamed, his body trembled. But finally the wreckage rolled away. The alien girl coughed, gasping for air. Her eyes opened wider, glowing faintly in the dim light. For a second, she looked at him with fear, then confusion. Why would a human save her? Her lips moved, trying to speak in her language, but the words broke into weak sounds. The soldier shook his head gently and whispered, "It's okay, I've got you." She could not understand his words, but maybe she understood his tone. He picked her up in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body trembling like a bird caught in a storm. The sound of drones grew louder, closer. He looked around quickly and spotted a cave in the rocks. Nearby, without thinking twice, he carried her and ran. Every step sent pain through his body, but he did not stop. The desert floor seemed endless, the shadows of drones crossing above him. He slipped inside the cave just as the machines passed overhead, their red lights scanning the sand. Inside the cave, the air was cooler, darker. He laid her gently on the ground and checked her wounds. Strange cuts glowed faintly on her arms, as if energy burned beneath her skin. She winced in pain, but she did not cry. Her strength surprised him, even in weakness. He tore a piece of his own uniform and wrapped it around her injury. She looked at him again, her bright eyes meeting his. There was no hate in them, only a question. Why save her? The soldier leaned back against the stone wall, breathing heavily. His body was near collapse, but his mind kept racing. What had he just done? He had saved the enemy, broken every rule. If his commanders found out, they would call him a traitor. But deep inside, he knew he could not have left her. Something in his heart refused to walk away. The alien girl reached out weakly, her hand touching his arm. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight. She did not speak his language, and he did not speak hers. But in that silence, something was exchanged. Not words, but a fragile trust. Outside, the desert wind howled and the war raged on. But inside that cave, a different story began. A story that neither of them could have expected, and one that would change both their lives forever. The night stretched long and heavy over the desert. The soldier sat against the cave wall, his breathing rough and shallow. The alien girl lay not far from him, her chest rising and falling slowly. She was alive but weak, her body carried strange wounds glowing faintly in the dark, outside. The sound of enemy drones hummed across the sky, red lights sweeping over the dunes. The soldier kept his hand on his weapon, ready if they found the cave. His eyes kept going back to the girl. She stirred slightly, whispering words he could not understand, her voice soft like wind through broken glass. He had no reason to stay. Yet every time he thought of leaving her, his heart refused. She was helpless, lost, hunted. And he could not abandon her. She was the enemy, yes, but she was also someone's daughter, someone who had not asked for this war. The next morning came with burning heat. The soldier shared a little water with her. She looked at the bottle, then at him, her expression confused. Slowly she drank, her lips trembling. She tried to say something, but only managed a weak sound. He smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Rest," he whispered, though she did not understand. Hours passed, but the danger never faded. Through the cave entrance, he spotted alien patrols moving across the sand, mechanical beasts with scanning eyes. They searched for survivors. They searched for her. He knew if they found her, they would not just kill her, they would erase her, because she had fallen into the hands of a human. The soldier felt the weight of choice pressing against him. He could leave her here and run, but every part of him screamed against it. He thought of the moment he pulled her from the wreck, the way her glowing eyes had opened, the way her hand had reached out for him. Even in fear, she had chosen to trust him. He tightened his grip on his weapon and stood. "We can't stay," he whispered. He went to her side, lifting her carefully in his arms. She winced at the movement, but did not fight him. Her eyes opened slowly, her gaze locking on his face. Confusion, fear, and something else reflected there. Step by step, he carried her deeper into the desert night, avoiding patrol lights, hiding behind rocks and broken ruins. His strength was fading, but he refused to stop. Every shadow could be an enemy. Every sound could be death. But he kept moving. At one point, the patrol passed so close he could hear the hum of their engines. He pressed her against the sand and covered her with his body. Holding his breath, she lay still beneath him, her glowing skin faint under the night. The machines scanned the dunes, then passed, leaving silence once more. The soldier pulled her up again, his heart pounding, sweat dripping from his face. He whispered softly, "Almost safe," though the words were more for himself than for her. Finally, after what felt like hours, he spotted the ruins of an old outpost. Broken walls, half buried under sand. It was dangerous, but it offered cover. He carried her inside, lowering her onto the ground. The walls cut off the endless heat, giving them a place to hide. She coughed again, trying to speak. This time her words were clearer, though strange. "Why, human?" She struggled to form the sounds. He froze, staring at her. She had spoken his word. Not perfectly, but enough. He knelt beside her. "Because you needed help," he answered slowly, pointing at himself. "Human," then pointing at her, waiting for her reply. She blinked, her lips moving. "Lyra," she whispered at last, her name. The soldier repeated it softly. "Lyra." The word felt strange on his tongue, but it brought a faint light to her tired face. That night, as the stars burned above the ruined outpost, the soldier stayed awake, his weapon beside him, the girl Lyra resting not far away. He wondered what fate had tied them together. Two enemies forced to trust each other, and deep inside, though he did not admit it, he knew he had already made his choice. He would not abandon her, not now, not ever. Because the moment he saved her, his life had changed, and so had hers. The ruins gave them shelter, but not safety. The soldier knew the patrols would keep searching, and he also knew his strength was fading. His wounds from the battle still burned. The long march had drained him, and now every muscle in his body ached. Still, he placed Lyra's safety before his own. He tore pieces of his uniform to make bandages, wrapping them carefully around her glowing injuries. She watched him with wide eyes, her breathing shallow. But she did not resist. For a time, silence filled the broken outpost. Only the sound of shifting sand and distant engines broke the stillness. The soldier leaned back against the cracked wall, exhaustion pulling at him, but Lyra shifted, her trembling hand touching his arm. Her skin felt warm, almost alive with light. He looked down as her fingers pressed gently, her eyes closing. A soft glow spread from her touch, seeping into his wounds, his breath caught in shock, the pain in his shoulder eased, the sharp sting in his side softened. The warmth of her strange energy flowed through him. He stared at her, unable to speak. She was using her own strength, her own life, to heal him. When she pulled her hand away, she collapsed slightly, her body weaker, the glow fading. He caught her before she hit the ground, holding her steady, his voice urgent. "Stop! You'll kill yourself." She did not understand his words, but maybe she felt the fear in his tone. Her lips curved faintly, almost like a tired smile. Then she whispered a single word, "Friend." Her accent broken, her voice soft but certain. The soldier froze, the word echoing in his mind, friend. He had never thought of an alien as anything but enemy. But here, in the shadows, she had spoken a truth that broke through the walls of war. Over the next few days, they stayed hidden among the ruins. He gave her water, shared his dried rations, taught her small human words by pointing at objects. She learned quickly, repeating after him in a voice that grew stronger each day. She pointed to herself, Lyra, then to him. Waiting, he answered softly, "Daniel." His name felt strange. After being unused for so long, her eyes lit faintly as she spoke it back. "Dan." "Eel," her voice carrying the sound with care. At night, the desert grew cold, the wind howling through the broken walls. Daniel wrapped his torn jacket around her, shivering beside her in the shadows. Sometimes she would hum softly, a strange alien song, low and soothing. It carried through the night like a promise of peace. He listened, and though he did not understand the words, the sound touched something deep inside him. He had lived through war, through orders and battles, but this quiet moment felt more powerful than any victory. Danger never left them. Twice, patrols came close, their red lights sweeping over the ruins. Daniel held her close, his hand over her mouth to keep her silent. Her eyes glowed in fear, but she did not cry. She trusted him, and that trust gave him strength. Each time the patrols passed, his heartbeat thundered in his chest. But when he looked at her afterward, he saw courage reflected in her gaze. Lyra's strength slowly returned. Though she remained fragile, she practiced walking with his help, leaning on him when her legs shook. In return, she continued to heal his wounds in small ways, pressing her glowing hands against his injuries. Every time she did, she weakened herself, but every time she looked at him with determination. It was as if saving him mattered more to her than saving herself. Daniel could not understand why, but as the days passed, he realized something had shifted. This was no longer just survival, it was something else, something unspoken. The war outside the ruins seemed far away, almost meaningless. Inside these walls, there was only him and her, two lives bound together by chance. One night, as the stars burned bright above the desert, Daniel looked at Lyra and whispered, "Why me?" She tilted her head, not understanding at first. Then she placed her glowing hand over his heart. Her eyes met his, clear and steady. "Because you save," she said slowly, her voice broken but strong. The words struck him deeper than any weapon. For the first time in years, Daniel felt more than duty, more than war. He felt seen, he felt chosen. And in that quiet moment, hidden in the shadows of ruin, a bond was born, not of soldier and enemy, not of human and alien, but of two souls who had saved each other. Asterisk. The ruins had given them time, but not safety. Daniel knew the patrols would never stop. The enemy wanted survivors, and they wanted Lyra most of all. She was not just a lost girl to them. She was proof of weakness, and they would erase her before she could tell anyone the truth. Daniel could feel the pressure growing heavier with each passing night. Their food was running out, And the sound of engines came closer every day. He told himself they had to move. Though he had no map, no plan, only the instinct to keep her alive. That evening, as the sun sank into the horizon, he guided Lyra through the broken desert streets of a ruined city. The once great towers now lay half buried in sand. Jagged metal and shattered glass glinting like teeth under the dying light. Lyra leaned on him as they moved, her steps still weak but steadier than before, her glowing eyes scanning the shadows with unease. Daniel kept his weapon ready, every nerve in his body tense. The silence of the ruins felt alive, as if unseen eyes were always watching. They hid in the shell of a collapsed building as searchlights swept across the sky. Through a crack in the wall, Daniel saw enemy soldiers moving. With machines, their voices sharp, their weapons glowing with deadly light, Lyra pressed close to him, her breathing fast. Daniel held a finger to his lips, urging her to stay silent. The patrol passed, but he knew they were being hunted more closely than ever before. As they pushed deeper into the ruins, the danger grew worse. Once, a soldier almost spotted them. Stepping so close, Daniel could hear the click of his boots on broken stone. Daniel pulled Lyra down, pressing her into the dust, holding his breath as the soldier's light passed inches from their faces. When the patrol moved on, Lyra trembled, her hands gripping Daniel's arm tightly. But she did not cry out. She trusted him completely. That night, they took shelter inside the remains of an old transport station. Daniel set her down carefully, scanning the shadows before lowering his weapon. Lyra looked at him with tired but determined eyes. "Why run?" she asked slowly, her broken words shaped carefully. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because they will kill us if we stop," he said softly. She tilted her head, her eyes searching his face. Then she whispered, "No. Kill you, kill me." Her meaning clear even if her grammar was not. She knew the truth. She knew that saving her had made Daniel a target too. Daniel sat beside her, his hands shaking as he wiped the sand from his face. The weight of his choice pressed harder. He could have walked away at the crash site, but he had not, and now there was no going back. He looked at her and saw not a burden, but a reason, something worth risking everything for. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the night, engines roaring closer, enemy lights flashing in the distance. Daniel's heart jumped. They had been found. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her to her feet. "We move now," he hissed. She stumbled, but she did not resist. Together they ran through the broken streets, the red glow of searchlights chasing them. Blasts shook the ground, walls crumbling as fire ripped through the ruins. Dust filled the air, choking them. Daniel shielded Lyra with his body, pulling her through shattered doorways and narrow alleys, every step a fight against fear and exhaustion. At one point, a squad cornered them, weapons raised, lights blinding. Daniel shoved Lyra behind him, his weapon steady though his hands trembled. He fired, sparks lighting the night. 2 soldiers fell, but more closed in. The sound of boots and metal claws filled the air. They were trapped. Daniel prepared to make his last stand, his breath steady, his eyes fixed on the enemy. Then, something changed. Lyra stepped forward, her hand glowing brighter than before, her body trembling as energy surged through her. Daniel shouted for her to stop, but she did not. She raised her hand and released a pulse of light. The air rippled. The soldiers stumbled back. Machines sparked and collapsed. The glow around her burned like fire. When it faded, silence followed. The enemy scattered, retreating into the shadows. Lyra collapsed. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground, his voice raw. "Why would you do that?" Her eyes fluttered open weakly, her lips forming the same words she had spoken before. "Friend." Daniel held her close, his heart pounding. He realized then that their bond was no longer fragile, no longer uncertain. She had saved him, just as he had saved her, and now their lives were tied together in a way he could not undo. The hunt was not over, the war was not over, but something inside Daniel had changed. He no longer thought of her as enemy. He no longer thought of himself as alone. Together, they would keep running. Together, they would keep fighting. And though the night around them was filled with danger, Daniel felt a spark of hope, because in Lyra's eyes, even through her weakness, he saw courage and he saw trust. The ruins were behind them now, but the danger never faded. Daniel and Lyra moved across the barren desert, their bodies weak, their spirits heavy. Every step carried the weight of survival. The stars stretched endlessly above, and the wind whispered across the sand, yet Daniel's mind was filled with only one thought. How long could they keep running? He knew his army had bases not far from this wasteland. If he reached them, he could return to safety. He could finally rest. But if he walked through those gates with Lyra beside him, they would not welcome her. They would see her as the enemy, as a prize to be dissected or destroyed. That night, as they sheltered inside a half-buried bunker, Daniel sat in silence, staring at the broken ceiling, his heart heavy with the weight of choice. Lyra sat close, her glowing eyes watching him quietly. She could not fully understand his silence, but she could feel the storm inside him. She reached out and touched his arm gently. "Daniel." "Safe," she whispered in her broken words, her voice uncertain. He looked at her, the conflict tearing at him. Safe for him meant danger for her. Safe for her meant he had to turn his back on everything he once knew. The following morning, Daniel scouted the horizon. Through the shimmer of heat, he saw smoke, thin and straight, rising far in the distance. It was human-made, the sign of a base. His people were close, closer than ever before. His heart raced. He could go there. He could finally stop running. But every glance at Lyra made his chest ache. She trusted him completely now. She followed his steps without hesitation, her survival bound to his. As the sun burned high, Lyra tried to stand on her own, her steps unsteady but determined. She wanted to show him she was not a burden. She looked at him with fierce eyes, whispering, "No leave." "I walk," her voice stronger than before. Daniel helped her anyway, his arm steady under hers. "I'm not leaving you," he muttered. The words meant more for himself than for her. By evening, the smoke grew clearer. The walls of the human outpost began to rise from the sand, sharp, solid, guarded. Daniel stopped at the ridge, his body torn between two worlds, his mind screaming at him to choose. If he walked into that outpost, he could live, but Lyra would die. If he stayed with her, he would be hunted by both sides. Branded traitor, enemy, outcast. For the first time in years, the soldier felt fear not of death, but of decision. Lyra stood beside him, her hand clutching his sleeve, her eyes filled with quiet strength. She did not speak, but she did not need to. Daniel saw the truth in her gaze. She already knew the danger. She already knew what his people would do to her, and still, she looked at him with trust, with belief, as if she was certain he would not betray her. He closed his eyes, memories of the crash flooding back, her broken body under the wreck, her hand glowing as she healed his wounds, her voice whispering, "Friend." He thought of the countless battles he had fought, the lives he had taken, the orders he had obeyed. None of it felt as real as this moment. None of it felt as heavy as the choice before him now. The sound of patrols echoed faintly from behind. The enemy was still searching. They were running out of time. Daniel's breath caught, his hands trembling as he whispered to himself, "What am I doing?" But when he looked at Lyra again, the answer came, not from his mind, but from his heart. He turned away from the human outpost, his boots shifting in the sand. Lyra's eyes widened, confusion flickering for a second, then relief. Daniel whispered, his voice rough but certain, "We're not going there, not now, not ever." She stared at him, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak. Then she whispered, "Choice," her voice carrying both question and answer. He nodded, his jaw tight. "My choice." The desert stretched wide before them, full of danger, full of enemies, full of uncertainty. But as Daniel guided her into the darkness away from the outpost, he felt lighter. For the first time he was not following orders, not obeying commanders, not fighting for survival alone. He was walking a new path, one shaped by his decision to protect her, to stand by her, no matter the cost. And though the horizon promised only hardship, in that moment, Daniel felt stronger, because he had chosen not just to save her life, but to keep her heart safe too. The desert did not forgive. The nights were colder. The days burned hotter. Daniel and Lyra pushed forward with little food, little water, and endless fear at their backs. Every shadow felt like danger. Every sound in the distance felt like the enemy returning, yet they walked on, because turning back was no longer an option. Daniel had chosen her, and with that choice came the burden of every risk. Every step forward meant betrayal of his army. Every step back meant her death. Still, when he looked at Lyra walking beside him, her glowing eyes shining with quiet determination, he knew he would not change his choice. One night, the wind carried the sound of engines closer than before. Daniel's heart clenched. They had been found again. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her into the shadow of a canyon wall. Their bodies pressed against the stone as lights swept across the sand. The machines moved like hunters, their voices sharp, their search more desperate. They were no longer hunting survivors. They were hunting them. Lyra's grip on his arm tightened. She whispered, "Run," her broken words sharp with fear. But Daniel shook his head. "No more running." He muttered, his voice steady. The patrols drew nearer. Daniel raised his weapon, his body tense. He was ready to fight even if it meant dying. Lyra stepped in front of him suddenly, her glowing hands trembling. "No," she whispered, her voice fragile but firm. Daniel's breath caught. He realized she was ready to shield him again, even if it destroyed her. He shook his head and pulled her back. "Not this time," he whispered, though she did not understand the words. She saw the meaning in his eyes. The enemy arrived in waves, armored soldiers, and mechanical beasts. Their lights cutting through the canyon. Daniel fired, the sound of shots echoing. Sparks flew, sand burst around them. Lyra crouched low beside him, her eyes glowing brighter with fear and fire. The battle was chaos. Daniel's weapon grew hot in his hands, the air filled with smoke and dust. Still he fought, protecting her with every breath. But the numbers were too many. They were being pushed back deeper into the canyon, the enemy closing in from both sides. Lyra rose suddenly, her voice breaking into a cry. Light pouring from her hands. Daniel reached to stop her, but it was too late. Her energy flared, knocking soldiers to the ground, burning machines into silence. The canyon walls echoed with the shock of her power. When the light faded, she staggered, her body shaking violently. Daniel caught her in his arms, his voice raw. "You'll kill yourself if you keep doing this." She looked at him weakly, her lips forming one word again. "Trust." The battle raged on, soldiers regrouping, more shadows flooding into the canyon. Daniel's mind raced. He knew they could not win by force, but he also knew they could not escape unless they trusted each other completely. He pressed his forehead to hers for a brief second, his voice a whisper. "I trust you." Her eyes widened, then softened, and for the first time, she smiled through her pain. Together, they fought as one. Daniel firing with precision, guiding her movements. Lyra using her power in short bursts, saving her strength but striking at the right moments. The canyon shook with the clash, but slowly, impossibly. The enemy line broke, the survivors retreating into the darkness, leaving silence in their wake. Daniel fell to his knees, holding Lyra against him, both of them breathing hard, their bodies bruised, their spirits burning. She touched his chest weakly, her voice soft. "You trust me?" He nodded, his eyes fierce even through exhaustion. "With my life." The night grew quiet again, the desert winds whispering across the canyon floor. Daniel looked at Lyra, her face pale but her eyes still glowing. He realized the truth of what she had given him. It was not just survival, not just healing, not just light. It was her heart. Her belief that he was worth saving, worth standing beside, and in return, he had given her the same. His trust, his loyalty. his choice to fight for her, no matter the cost. The battle had not just been against the enemy, it had been against fear, against doubt, against the walls between them. And in the fire of that fight, those walls had fallen, leaving only trust. The canyon was silent after the battle. Only the crackle of fire and the hiss of cooling metal filled the air. Daniel held Lyra close, her body trembling from exhaustion, her glowing light faint but still alive. He brushed the dust from her face, his chest tight. "You did it," he whispered. Even though she could not understand every word, she understood his tone. Her weak smile told him she was still fighting. Not just for herself, but for him. They stayed hidden through the night, Daniel keeping watch while Lyra rested. The stars above were endless, and for the first time in years, he felt their beauty. War had stolen beauty from him long ago, but beside her, even the broken world seemed brighter. At dawn, Daniel stood at the canyon edge, looking out at the vast desert ahead. Danger was still out there. His army would hunt him. Her people would hunt her. But he no longer felt fear of the future. He felt something stronger, something he had almost forgotten. Lyra woke with the first light, her voice soft. "Daniel," she whispered, her broken words shaping his name with care. He turned, kneeling beside her, her glowing eyes fixed on him, not with fear, not with confusion, but with something deeper. She placed her hand against his chest, where his heart beat strong. "You save me," she said slowly, each word carrying weight. Daniel swallowed hard, his hand covering hers. "And you saved me," he whispered. The desert stretched endless before them, but now it was no longer emptiness. It was a path, a road they would walk together. Daniel knew he could never return to his old life, never go back to being the soldier who obeyed orders without question. He had broken every command, but in breaking them, he had found something greater than duty. He had found meaning. He looked at Lyra and realized she was no longer just someone he had rescued. She was the reason he kept moving, the reason he kept breathing. That night, as they made camp under the shattered remains of an old satellite dish, Lyra sat close beside him. Her strength was still fragile, but her spirit was unshaken, her voice stronger now. "Daniel." "Heart," she said, struggling to find the right words. He frowned at first. Then his chest tightened as he understood. She was not just thanking him for saving her life. She was giving him her trust, her heart. For a long time, Daniel said nothing, his throat dry, his mind heavy with the weight of the moment. Finally, he whispered back, "My heart too." The war outside would never stop. Armies would clash, orders would be given. But none of it mattered here, not in this place, not between them. They were hunted, they were outcasts, but they were not alone. Every step forward would be a fight, every day a test. Yet Daniel no longer feared it, because Lyra had given him something the war had taken long ago, hope. As the wind howled through the broken dish above them, Daniel leaned his head against hers. Her glow pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of light. Together, they sat in silence, two enemies who had become something more. Not human and alien, not soldier and survivor, but two souls bound by trust, by sacrifice, by love. And so the story of war became something different. The story of one man who saved an alien girl, and the girl who gave him her heart, a promise. Formed in the shadows of ruin, a promise to fight, to survive, to never let go of each other, no matter what hunted them. No matter what waited on the horizon, they would face it together, because in a galaxy filled with darkness, their hearts had found light, and that light would never die.